Hello, there you are up there. I'm Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and it's still a little bit early, but I wanted to make sure there was a couple of days ago or like a couple of weeks ago where it wouldn't let me on, and I was late, and I don't like to be late to hang out with you guys. So it's now 3:30, so now we're on time. And hello, who's here? Please say hello if you can in the chat. I love to know who's here. Today we're going to be talking about, well, first of all, let me get my microphone because it's way back here. That would probably help. There we go. There we go. So today we're talking about empty nesters. We're talking about who we are, finding who you are without your parent role. Now, that's the title of today's show. However, we may end up talking about a lot of different things that are related to this particular topic. So my background was first I have a BA in psychology, and then I studied in graduate school. I studied marriage, family, and child therapy, and I was a therapist working in recovery and substance abuse for a long time. And then what was missing for me, because therapy doesn't really address spiritual issues. It doesn't address that aspect of ourselves that is related to something beyond our physical and our thinking perspective and the sort of the norm or consensus of reality. Therapy doesn't address that so much. And so I was missing that. And when I was working in recovery, I realized that most of my clients who were in some level of recovery from their substance abuse, they had something I didn't have. They had a relationship with themselves and with some higher power that gave them some peace and serenity. So I decided that I needed to study that. So, long story very short, I found a school out in California, which at the time was called the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. And it was in Palo Alto. It's now called Sophia University. And there I studied spiritual guidance. And I thought I was going to be a spiritual guide, but it was like I didn't know what that was going to look like. And then I found coaching, life coaching. And I found that the coaching model was really for me an integration of what I had studied and experienced as a therapist working in recovery. So a lot of recovery elements are part of the work that I do. Coaching also, for me, infused that spiritual aspect of ourselves that is so important. And I also, when I was doing my dissertation, I studied transformation and what transformation really is. And so I was able to put all of that together in what I do as a transformational coach. So I say all that to you because part of my channel and this particular playlist or a playlist is spiritual dilemmas and cultivating enlightened living and life. So there's this aspect of the work that I do that is more than just talking about, okay, you're an empty nester or you're going to be an empty nester or you have been and what's that like and what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. Something much bigger than that is happening as far as I'm concerned. And so this particular channel, the Dr. Rosie Kuhn channel, and my playlist mostly addresses who we are being more. I mean, we are who we are as a spiritual being having a human experience, and who we are as a being, and this being that we don't address very often, we don't think about, and we don't address. And so, in a sense, that one that doesn't get addressed cultivates patterns and habits and addictions that it needs to kind of feel comfort and supported, and to help it address those parts of ourselves that get ignored or are so offended by life and so unwitnessed and insignificant, and feels like, wow, I need something to make myself feel better so I can survive. So anyway, all of that to say that my background and the foundation of my work is uh, is embracing who you are as this human being who is going through life processes. Who in this particular in this month, I'm looking at families as a spiritual path, and who you are as this individual, whether you're a woman or a man, and the choice that you make to have children. And in that choice, there's the beginning, middle, and end of your you who you the role that you take on is the role of as a mother, the caring of the child, getting pregnant, carrying the child for 9 months, and all of that, plus what happens after that in your role as a mother throughout, we'll say, the first 18 years. And the same with the fathers taking on the responsibilities of what that does that mean for you, the identity that you carried, the roles that you played throughout those specifically, generally 18 years of life. And it's just fascinating to think about um, how that process works. Now, if we stay in our small self or our ego self, or the one that says, yes, I want to be a mom, and yes, I want to have babies, and yes, I want to be the best mom, and I want to take my children to ballet school, or to creative practices, or I want to teach them how to meditate, or whatever that is, or football or baseball. You have this intention, and it becomes who you believe yourself to be. And that's an important thing that happens for us. And at the same time, that small self who takes on all of these identities and roles, uh, it's part of who you are, but it's not all of who you are. And Jesus said, "Be in this world, but not of it." And as a parent, it's like, be in this role of a parent, but that's not all that you are. There's so much more than just this parent role that and you might be a parent, and you might also have your career, and you also are a child. You have parents and families and communities that you participate in. So the role as a parent is one aspect of you, but there may be many. And so in that place of looking at the roles that you play in your life and the identities that you take on, it's just there's a point, probably many times, not just as the empty nesters, but there's a point where you begin to question, what is this all about? What's the point of all of this? Last week I talked about what it's like for some people who were never the favorite child, or the issues and challenges that come up as children in families. Um, and so in this week, we're talking about that sense of who am I, and what's the role I'm playing? Quite often parenting isn't smooth sailing. We're cultivating relationships with our children in a way that we are intending to create respectful uh, children that respect us and trust us, and that we respect them as well. And we're in the process of cultivating those relationships, but sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes our children ignore us, or avoid us. That we're not building relationships based on collaboration and connection, but there's a breakdown, and the children kind of don't want to get to know you, or don't want to know you. Hey, Marge, nice to see you. So, it's sometimes really challenging to have children who don't listen, don't want to listen. Maybe they have situations in their life where they can't listen. Perhaps they have some disabilities or situations which keeps them from being able to relate to you as an adult. One client of mine, her son is on the autism spectrum. And so the mother, we'll call her Carrie, she worked very, very hard to create a structure for her child so that he would be most fulfilled in his life and most uh, effective in his life. She did everything she could to make it as best as she could. And that child is now gone off to boarding school, and and she is left feeling fulfilled and somewhat relieved of some of the burdens and some of the responsibilities that she carried for so long. Um, so there's these different relationships, but the relationship that she had with her daughter, I'm sorry, her son, it it was challenging because her son, sorry, I get him kind of when I'm stressed, I confuse him, but um, her son didn't have the capacity necessarily to relate to his mom the way that she had hoped. So quite often we're left with these feelings and emotions of our children um, not not meeting us or who we are as adults, and realizing that our parents didn't meet us. They didn't have the abilities, or they didn't know how to do any better. So I'm saying all of this in terms of there's this 18-year period of cultivating or developing or being in relationship with these children. And then there's a point where they go away. Mostly. Sometimes it doesn't. Apparently today, and children aren't leaving home as early as they did, but there is still this process of parents becoming less parents of young children and now being parents, or being in a sense a collaborative relationship with an adult. So not only is there quite often the empty nest where children leave home, so there's no one there to cook or wash for, or to tell, go do your homework, or no, you can't use the car, but that there's actually no one there. There's an absence. Um, and that can be quite challenging for people in knowing how to be with that. And again, for some people, their whole identity has been wrapped up in being a parent, being a mom, being a dad. And when that changes and the child goes off to school or goes off to living, or getting married and cultivating that whole life, this individual, this parent or parent of dad or mom, has to deal with the shift in relationship. And it's kind of it's an interesting dynamic when we can be present to it, and look at, again, our intention of, I really want to have a child. And first it becomes very much about me as a person who wants a child, because I want to feel the nurturing, I want to feel the connection, I want to feel that partnership, this sense of belonging. But then when we realize that there's a lot of work at stake here, there's a lot of responsibility, there's a lot of roles, like you're the driver to get them to school or get them to their sports or music time. You're the homework police, you're the cook and the laundry person, and you clean up after them. You're the nurse or the doctor, and in a sense of taking care of their health issues. And so all of these different elements of you that are called upon to be in this relationship with these individuals. So you say, hey, I want to be a parent, but it's like, and I want this love and nurturing, but it's like, wait, I'm now all of these things. And where am I in that? And sometimes people get lost in the roles while they're in their immersed in the practice of being a mom or a dad, or just the parent. And at some point that changes. But if we look at how we choose uh, to be a parent, we have this place um, where we have to look at the larger relationship with our children, um, and who they become. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit I think in 2 weeks. I'm going to talk about, when do our children become who we want them to be? But it's also when do our parents become who we want them to be? We want a relationship with these people based on our context of family, our context of love and connection, our context of life, what that looks like and how it should be, our context perhaps of spirituality or health or money. And a lot of arguments and challenges in family is because, you need to go earn your own money, or your religious beliefs are not the same as mine, and that makes me upset and angry, or your sexual preferences are different, or your gender preferences, all of these things that can be different than what you anticipated in terms of bringing this child into the world, and this child is going to be a friend of yours, and this child is going to be in your life forever as the way you want. Hello, Fred. I'm glad you're here. Uh, and then we realize that these children have their own reality. It really, literally, they have their own reality that's so different, perhaps, than yours. And we can be put off by that, and we can be disturbed by that. We can be angry about that. Because we're attached to, I want my child to look like me and have the way I think, and think and be the way that I, enjoy the things that I enjoy, so we can do it together. And sometimes it just doesn't happen that way all the time. I really, I'm a nature person. You can see that all over the place. And I wanted my children to be nature people, but they're not. My daughter lives in the, city center in a city in Canada. She loves downtown life, and very different. And so it's a place where I was hoping we'd have this great connection, and we'd go out in the woods and camp or whatever. And it's like, doesn't happen because she has a different preference. So all of this is to say that we have these desires to be in relationship with these children. And we have this desire to be who we are in relation to these children. So in a sense, I want my daughter to want what I want, or to be like me in ways so that I can relate to her effortlessly. That makes life easy for me and makes life fun for me. When she's different than me, that challenges me. And quite often, what parents do when their children challenge them is they say, "You're wrong. You're wrong, you're bad, you're stupid, you're nothing, you're, whatever, get a life or get out," that kind of thing, as opposed to looking at how we can look differently at who our children are becoming. So this is all part of this empty nester thing, because there's that moment where our children go off to school, or go off and get married, or go off and get their own place. And we go, oh, that's done. And now they're an adult. And now we're going to relate to them as an adult, as if one door closed and another one opened. And here we are. And we're going to have this different relationship. But quite often, we try to be who we were as the mom or dad, without thinking, now I'm relating to an adult. I'm relating to an adult that has chosen to be independent enough to go off to school, or go off to be in their own dwellings, their own place, wherever that is. And there's a difference, a separation, if you will, an individuation for both child and parent. And this is a part that most people don't think about, is that we think the child is the one that's individuating. The child is the one that's growing up and changing and having life issues. But parents are having the same degree, basically, of requirement to say, oh my gosh, my relationship with this individual is different. And I have to either keep trying to bring them in and keep them enmeshed in my little home the way that I want it to be. They'll come home for Thanksgiving, they'll come home for Christmas, they'll come home, then bring their laundry, or whatever it is that keeps me in my mom identity and roles. Or I can go, wow, this person is now separating. And the separating process goes on for a long time. I mean, obviously, anyone who has has teenagers know that there's a point where they begin to individuate. They begin to disidentify with family perspectives, and begin to create their own for themselves. And that's really an important practice for them. They need to decide what they like and what they don't like. And part of that is they have to decide they don't like you, perhaps. so that they can find themselves. That and it doesn't always work that the way that they don't like you, but quite often there is that place where that happens. I was talking to a woman, I mentioned this last week, where her daughter is 9 years old, and she said, I'm just in rapture in being able to talk to her because she's available and she's here. And I know that at some point she's going to want to be with her friends. She's going to have her own interests. I won't be the main interest, and me and her dad won't be the main interest in her life. And that's true. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get them to individuate, to become their own self. So there's the part of us that says, I like my identity as a mom. I like my identity as the chief cook and bottle washer. I like my identity as the controlling person and the organizer and the manager. I've got my finger on and I'm controlling everything, and the family is safe because I'm doing my job. And when the family starts to change, then you, if you're one of those managing kind of people, you have to change or not. You can be upset and angry and resentful and pissed off, and start to worry and try harder to stay in control. Or you can go, wow, my family is evolving. My children are finding their own way. And right now it might scare me, and it might challenge me, but that's what parenting is about. So if you guys have anything to say about that, I would love to hear. And if you haven't already given me a thumbs up, that would be great. I'm going to go over there for a second, get some water. I'll be right back. So one of my intentions for these lives and this particular stream of consciousness, if you will, is that most most articles on whatever I'm talking about, but in this case, empty nesters, there's quite a lot that says, here's what you can expect to happen when you're an empty nester. When you are an empty nester, you can expect to feel grief and loss. You can expect to feel loneliness or isolation. You can expect to have challenges with your marriage. You can expect all kinds of things. And in a sense, here's the problems that are going to show up. It's problem oriented. It's something's wrong now, or something's bad, or something isn't working. This change has occurred, and here are the bad things you're going to deal with. And they call it a syndrome, the emptiness syndrome. And when we give titles to things like that, now you got a problem. It's like a you know, a dysfunction, a disorder, a syndrome. You've got a syndrome, and now there's something wrong, as opposed to this is an evolution of you going through this process of evolving yourself, and that this particular time of your life where you've cultivated these relationships and you got to know yourself in these different capacities, and now that's completing itself, and a transition is occurring, and you're in this transition. This is natural. There's no syndrome. This is natural. There's no problem. The problem is when we make it wrong or bad or hard. And that doesn't mean that we don't need support. Can be very challenging for people to detach from their role as parent or their identity as a parent. It can be very challenging, and to get support, to need support, to want support. That's a good thing, just to be able to assist in having somebody listen to you, a good thinking partner to hear what's going on and to be present to you while you're going through this. That's a really good thing. But to make it wrong and problems and those kinds of elements, it always grates on me. And so part of my offering these lives is to say, these are all aspects of our growing ourselves and learning through these processes so that we can know ourselves better and be our fullest self, to go, wow, that was, that's what I did and I loved it, and it was really challenging. I'm kind of glad it's over and I don't know what's next. I don't know. And so I'm attached. I want to be back here because I know I'm safe in this role as parent, as opposed to saying, I want to explore who I am, but I'm not quite sure how to do that because I don't know my capacities to be. I don't know. And that's part of this, families as a spiritual path, because the unfolding and the learning and the open to being is in a sense the greatest opportunities that we're given in this lifetime. We don't see it that way. Our consensus view of reality makes things wrong or bad or syndromes and psychological problems, when 99% of what's going on is natural and normal, and our opportunities for us, just growth opportunities. So that's a big deal. It doesn't necessarily mean when your children go off to school or go wherever they're going that the relationship is over. I mean, maybe, when I was 18, my mom just couldn't wait to get me out of the house because I was a big pain in the neck. And now I understand that. I thought she was the pain in the neck, and she was in the way that she was. But, to have the relief from children that, were constantly dismissing and disrespectful, that's not pleasant to live with for 18 years or however many years she lived with that. And so, we have all different kinds of experiences, from grief or sadness, anger, to scared. It's scary, because we don't know what's going to come up. We don't know who we're going to be coming, what's going to come. Carrie, who I mentioned earlier, she's like, oh man, I got to sleep in this morning and I got to have dinner with my sister, and that was really fun. And the relief and the freedom is what she's experiencing right now as an empty nester. And that's kind of fun, but she's like, ooh, I might experience something challenging. And it's like, yeah, you don't know. You don't know. So it's all up for grabs. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to hear them. And if you don't, but you haven't already liked or subscribed, I would love it to have you like it if any of this is of value to you. And you may have comments later that I would love to hear if you're an empty nester, or any aspect of this conversation that we're having that would be valuable for other people to hear from you. What else did I want to say about that? Why are my notes so little today? I don't have a lot of notes. I thought I did. So when I was actually an empty nester a long time ago, when I was in my 20s, actually, because of my relationship with my husband and because of circumstances, I gave up custody of my kids when I was 27, and they were very young. And so I became an empty nester really quickly, early. And what I did was I went into denial. I mean, first of all, I had to left this marriage and I left my children. And so I had to cultivate a job and work. I mean, just work and get a home and take care of my survival needs. And so that became my primary focus. And the way that I felt about my children and where they were, I was happy that they were in a home that was stable, and that they were taken care of by their dad and grandparents, and there were lots of close people around. So I was really happy and comforted by the fact that they were taken care of. So then I needed to grow myself up. I needed to take care of myself, and that took all my energy. And so in terms of grief or loss, my identity as a mom, first of all, I never gave up the identity as a mom until just recently. Uh, and 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 I always had this trajectory. My children would come live with me, so I was always this in a mom state, even though I was training to be a therapist, or I was looking for places to live and working as a waitress while I was going to school, and in a relationship. All of those things are happening, and this part of me that constantly held that identity as a mom, it was a constant. And, it wasn't until, and I said this in a couple of previous, uh, lives, that it wasn't until I realized, I have a yurt down here, and I had it all ready for, children to come and visit. So my grandchild and his parents, and it was all set for family. And the realization came to me that they don't visit me. It's partly because of challenging relationships, but partly because they live far away and they have other obligations as well. And so I realized, like, wow, I spend so much of my reality, even though my daughter is in her 40s, right? So really empty nester in terms of she wouldn't be living with me anyway. But the reality of the degree to which I have been holding on to this identity as a mom, and it was like, wow, like, how much of my life have I not been living because of this identity and this almost a grasping, a grip on this belief and this orientation of parenting and momming. I wanna be a mom, and I wanna belong, and all of those kinds of things. And in that moment, I was just like, "Oh my god." I realized that the degree to which I had enmeshed myself in this identity. Now my daughter's doing all what she's doing in her life and visiting her dad or going on vacation with other people and all of those things. It's me in relation to me that this is all happening. And the realization that I'm trying to make a relationship with my daughter, it's not evolving naturally because I'm trying. I'm trying it to make it what I want it to be, and it's not that. And I keep trying, and that creates irritation and frustration in her. She gets angry and upset, which makes sense because I'm not I'm not honoring who she is and how she is. I'm asking her to be different constantly. I want you to be the daughter I want you to be, and this happens a lot. Our parents have demands of our children, and our children have demands on us. Like, I don't want that from you. That's not what I want from you. And to create a relationship and listen to each other and say, okay, I get it. This is who you are, and I totally get that this is me and mine. Is my issue. Then I have to deal with it. And again, coming back to empty nesters, this is part of that process of allowing our children to be who they are. Like fledglings on the end of a nest, they leave the nest and they're flying and they're out and beyond, and you might never see them again if you're a bird. I don't know how that works, but I know that we have to learn how to let go. Not only let go of that, but it's generally letting go of what we're anticipating. We have attachments to our own concepts and context of relationship and belonging. And now parts of our family are out somewhere out there. And how does that shift our sense of belonging? How does that shift our sense of who we are? And that's I think the big deal with people who are going through this transition from uh, h- uh, having children at home to no children, is that who am I, and how do I relate to these people who are just people in the world? We have this connection. I'm a biological mom, but aside from that, is there anything to relate to? Is there anything other than obligation to the relationship? And this is, I think, where we can begin to grow relationships as opposed to being pissed off or upset and worried. Are they ever gonna come see me again? And then when they call, you go, oh, you finally called. Like those kinds of demanding elements of a relationship that can start to grate on children as they're becoming adults. Now, I'm throwing a lot of information in here about these kinds of dynamics when it's just so normal. Like, here's what we want. We want you to go off, but we want you to come home on a regular basis so that we get our needs met as parents. And it can't necessarily work that way. And I've found that through um, my relationship with my daughter, in a sense that when I anticipate or assume a relationship with her, it turns into something other than a genuine, authentic connection. When I say, you're my daughter and you need to do this with me, or I'm, your mother and I need to spend so and so how many holidays with you, it's like, everything stops, because now there are demands, and demands are pretty interesting when it comes to relationships, especially adult relationships with our adult children. And we have expectations and assumptions, but that does not mean that necessarily will translate into what your demands or your assumptions you're expecting and wanting of these people. They're now individuals with individual abilities to choose. Now, our consensus view of reality says you have to go home and spend holidays with your family, or you have to go to your spouses or your girlfriends or your partners. You have to do family thing. Like that's a requirement. And the truth is those requirements actually weigh really heavy on relationships. And those requirements and obligations burden relationships. They don't grow relationships. And so many of us in families, and we're all in families to one degree or another, we struggle with that dynamic. I don't want to go home. I don't want to do that this year. I really want to do something I want to do this year. And it's interesting to when people go, oh, I can't tell that to my mom because she'll be really upset. And it's like, yeah, but that's maybe what you got to do to grow yourself up even to the next degree, to individuate, to have an authentic relationship with your parents. Because quite often it's like, oh, I don't tell my parents that I don't want to go home for the holidays. It's just one specific example, because I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to upset them. But this is where we begin to have authentic relationships with people who say they love us. It's like if my daughter says, hey, I want to do something else for the holidays, it's like, I want to have Christmas with you. But yes, I totally get it. You got to do what you have to do. I want her to want to be with me. I don't want her to have to be with me. And for some people, it's like, I don't care. I want them there no matter what. If they're unhappy, I don't care. They'll have a good time. I'll feed them well, but I don't care. I want them to be there because that's what I want. And that's where we're not creating relationships that are healthy and dynamic, because we're still attached to, I am the mother and I have this identity and I have this role, and if they don't show up for holidays, I can't be me in that. And children go, yeah, my mom would be really upset. It's like, yeah, your mom has to grow herself up to realize that she's more than just that. And she's a grown up. She can deal with those emotions, or she can get some support. So quite often in the work that I do as a transformational coach is I'm helping people see a bigger picture, see what's beyond the constraints of family dynamics, the constraints of how it's supposed to be, and the obligations. And it's written in Families 101 that you're supposed to come home, you're supposed to do what I want, you're supposed to still be a kid even though you're adult. And that's how we create adult children, children that aren't allowed to think for themselves, aren't allowed to feel, aren't allowed to know what they want. This is a part of what I had learned a long time ago in terms of families that are dysfunctional, is that their children aren't allowed to know what they think, feel, need, or want. And if you think about parents who are still constrained in their parent role, sometimes they're not allowed to have wants, feelings, needs, and wants beyond, this is my role, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is how I'm supposed to be, and my children are supposed to fulfill their roles so that I can keep my role. So I would love to hear some feedback from you guys, even a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether this is relevant or positive or helpful. Um, it's there is intention here, and the intention is to say there's so much going on inside of us that's bigger than just this identity as a role, and the transition from um, being a mom and being a dad and being in relationship to our children as children, but then beginning to address ourselves as adults, addressing adults and addressing adults the way we would address our friends, our adult friends, with respect and consideration and no attachment. uh, there's less obligations. The people who are your friends are really your friends. You don't have obligations. They don't have obligations other than they love you and you love them, and you meet when you can. But it's not you meet because you have to. You meet because you want to, and that growing those relationships with your children so that there's that flexibility and fluidity of that for both of you. That's an important part of this evolution for you and your children. Marge says, I feel blessed that my daughter chose the same career path that I did, massage, so that when she started her first job in the spa I worked at, I got to watch her functioning in her new adult self. And we had the interest in healing in common to share. Yes, that's really, really great. When there are those similarities and the interests are the same, and that's a really fun thing. And for it's like in partnerships, people quite often will say, my partner isn't anything like me. And it's like, for me, I find that really difficult. Like, how can you be with somebody who isn't anything like you? Uh, and with our children, even, it's like, wow, if my child isn't like me, like I say, my daughter likes to live in downtown, and I like to live in the country. Like, how do we engage? And there's a point of learning for me, of learning, like, wow, I want to be interested in how this works for her. What brings her joy about living in a city? What brings her this level of connection and happiness where she's at, rather than dismissing it and saying, boy, that's really stupid, or boy, look at all the pollution and the electromagnetics and all of those things that might be in my conversation, rather than dismissing and disrespecting, going, I want to know what makes you happy. I want to know what that is. And so where there's the that person isn't anything like me, so I don't have anything to talk about with them or engage with, it can be the opposite of saying, wow, now I have an opportunity to really get to know this person in a way that moves me outside my comfort zone. So asking the question so that I want to know. I'm fascinated by this person. I don't know about my daughter and I think this is true for a lot of our children's or our parents. When I didn't know, even now, I don't know very much about my mother. I know what I've been told, but I don't know really about my mother because I never had that kind of relationship where it was like, tell me what it was like being you. But here, and that's part of the intention of these lives with you, is to say you have an opportunity. Well, we all have an opportunity to look at ourselves and see how it's going, and if it's not fulfilling, how can we make it so? Not how can we make other people do what we want them to do so we feel better or we like ourselves, but like, how can we shift so that this is enriching? Our life is enriching and it enriches other people's lives. I want to enrich my daughter's life. And so I can't enrich her life by being upset and pissed off and dismissing her choices. I have to honor and respect and enjoy that she is and she's finding her own way. She's finding and discovering her own truths and her own happiness. It doesn't come through me. And part of me wants it to be. I want to be the center of her life. I do. And it doesn't work that way. That's, I can own it. I want to be the center of her life. I'm not. And I got to get over myself. And that's what happens for a lot of us as parents is we got to get over ourselves and discover other aspects of life that are fulfilling. Now, empty nesters quite often happen. I mean, the transition. Some people lose their children through death or sickness or drugs. There's different times that this happens. There's situations where children run away from home. There's all these situations where parents have to deal with this sense of who am I? Here's this individual that is out there in the world or has passed on, and who am I in that? And how do I be me? And it's very confusing. I was talking to somebody today, and they said the same thing. It's really confusing to have a child out there and not have a relationship with that. And Gracie's wanting to say hello. Hi, Grace. So it's all of that that's involved here, not just, my child has gone off to school. It's, September, university starts. And so I'm now an empty nester, but it's like, wow, my son decided 8 years ago he didn't want to know me anymore. And so he just exited my life. And that creates an interesting challenge. So, I mean, this is really true. This is not just I'm making this up. But my son decided that he didn't want to know me anymore. And whatever it was that had that happen, we've never talked about it. And that's where we are. And that is challenging to go, wow, here's this individual out in the world, and I don't know him. I don't know him. And if we were to connect again, what would that be like? How would it be? Would we have a place of respect and trust? Would we have an ability to come to an understanding and an acceptance and a place of appreciation of each other? And I think every parent, I believe this is true, that every parent has to, in a sense, grapple with that if they want to. I'm saying everybody should. Hang on a second. What's up? What's up? Come here. Come on. Right here. Just a few more minutes. Yeah. This is Gracie here. If you haven't seen Gracie already, come here. Come here. Here's Gracie. Yeah. This is Gracie. And she's getting a little anxious. So she's not anxious, like she wants to go play. Yeah. So just want a little attention. But I think every single one of us can say, okay, I have this child in the world, and what do I do with that? What do I want to do with that? In a sense, I'm a child in the world, but I have this human being in the world that is now out in the world. And how do I relate to that child, whether it's someone that, in a sense, has disconnected from you or is very connected? How do you want to be in relationship with that person in relation to your own knowing, that your own truth, your own connection to yourself, your own sense of belonging and what's true for you, and what's necessary to perhaps disidentify or disconnect from the role as parent and become the role as something else. I can't parent my daughter. If she wants some information, she can come to me, but she goes to a lot of other people too. So I don't know what I am other than we have this connection and we continue to engage the way that we do. And for me, I want to, and I believe she does too, wants to continue to evolve our relationship, pretty naturally, not like we're trying to make it happen. We're just being with each other, but there's something that I'm enjoying in terms of allowing that to grow. But as soon as I become demanding about, I am a mother, I am your mother, and I have this identity, and you have to respect in that. It's like, nope, doesn't work. It doesn't work. So that's what's happened for me. So there's 4 people here today. That's great. And I'm wondering if the Marge and Fred are 2 people that have said hello in the chats. And if the other 2 would like to say hello in the chat, that would be great. And if you haven't already, this is for those who are here or those who will be here in it's watching the recording. If you haven't already liked or subscribed this work, I would be really happy to have you do that. And lets me know that what I'm saying has value to you. And please be willing, happy to share this with other people. Perhaps you know people who are in that transition of parenting, or even as a child, to say, yeah, here's a lady who's talking about empty nesters. And because this can be a dilemma for children whose parents aren't handling the empty nest as well as we'd like them to. And so this can be a challenge for the children whose parents are still demanding that they come home and be children. It's a wonderful, challenging, hard, but a wonderful exploration to go, wow, yeah, there are parents who don't want to give up that parenting role. And our consensus of reality says families are the number one unit in the world. So you have to stay connected. But that have to quite often creates so much dysfunction, so much disrespect, and so much abuse and violation of human rights. And it happens so much more than we imagine. Just in terms of saying, oh, my mom says I got to go home. I got to go home because I'm not allowed to have my own ideas of what Christmas means to me or whatever. So it's that kind of, I'm not respected by my parents. I'm not respected for my own truths. And guess what? Those people generally choose partners and friends that don't respect them, and their children then don't respect them. So it continues the process over and over again. Hello, David. I'm really glad you're here. Thank you. Even if you're late, I really appreciate that you're here. I'll look forward to hearing what you have to say when you watch it later. So yeah, it can be really challenging for children and adult children for when their parents won't give up their roles and their identity and the importance. My father was sort of a pretty autocratic parent, and he ruled really harshly and not abuse, sort of, but not physically abusive, but emotionally abusive. But he ruled based on he had a lot of money, and so he used his money to control his children. And obviously, we were complicit in that control because we wanted the money. It did not create a healthy relationship, and there were elements that were healthy and wonderful and loving, but the idea and what I took away from that was not a sense of I'm loved for who I am, but for something else. I wasn't respected. My word, my truth, the way that I looked at the world, he didn't care about. He didn't care about it because it didn't look like what was important to him. And so I was dismissed and disrespected. So we take that on. I'm dismissed and disrespected. What does that mean about me? And I didn't have enough self-worth. I didn't have enough core strength to say, I'm done with you, much like my son was able to do. Is like, I'm done with you. I don't care about your money. I don't care about whatever I am going to honor my own truth. And I respect him for that. I've said this before. I respect him for that and honor him because I couldn't do it. So, but our parents, I think, sometimes find it very difficult to see their children as grown-ups and as adults with their own thoughts and their own feelings, their own knowings, their own trajectory. And I'm more excited about that now as I understand and come to accept my own children's trajectories and own their own preferences and delights, because I delight now in what delights them, as opposed to me going, that's not delightful. This is what's delightful. Come to Orcas Island, be with me. That's delightful. And it's like, yeah, no, not anymore. I've given that up because I've come to accept and want to know my children, who they are as adults, not as my children. And it's a transition that every parent, I believe, has to make. And every family, all the relationship between parent and child they get to decide what's the level of closeness, what's the level of belonging, what's the level of comfort in how often we visit, or what's necessary in that process. And it's fluid and it's unfolding constantly. It's not a constrained, here's our family and this is what our family looks like and will look like forever. It's an evolving, fluid, wonderful possibility in relationships and love. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for you. So any other last thoughts about family nesters? Not family nesters, empty nesters. See if there's anything else I wanted to say. My point is that this is an evolving, transitional process that we go through from the moment we, conceive children to the moment that they are out there in the world, and basically until the day we die, we are in relationship with these beings. And it may be difficult, and hence we have family therapists, we have marriage therapists. I think that was another thing I want to mention too, is that quite often people who are married and they're in love, then they become parents, and quite often their love relationship takes second or third place. And then when the children are gone, you've got these two people living together, but they haven't been relating as a couple in a very long time. And so that's also an element of this process of empty nesters that can be challenging, because it's like, oh, here's these two people who have been living together in the role of parents, but are they actually compatible still as they were before the children? So that's an element too. So I just bring that up in terms of, yes, there's that's a big part of this process, is that not only is there an evolution in the relationship with children, but also with partners. If you're still together, there's an evolution in the partnership, and who are you now and who do you want to become together? So again, my point is that you may want or desire or need some support from people who are specialists in the field of family therapy or family coaching or marriage coaching or therapy, whatever it is you need, or even the spiritual elements of growing yourself through this process, and the spiritual element or spiritual coaching. So there are all kinds of support out there for you if that's what you feel you need, and or that it just would be helpful. So I totally support you in getting the support you want and need in that process. All right. Well, I've said a lot. I hope it's been helpful. And I'd love to have you leave comments below of your experience as a child or as a parent going through this process, this transition. Let me know how it is for you. All right. Thanks again. Bye for now. Thanks again, Marge and Fred and David. I appreciate your guys being here. I look over here because I'm looking at the chat. I'm looking at your pictures here. All right. Bye for now.